The morning air in downtown Manhattan carried that peculiar mix of coffee, ambition, and exhaust fumes that define the city. 23-year-old Maya Chen pushed through the heavy glass doors of the Starbucks on Fifth Avenue, her messenger bag weighing down her shoulder, filled with textbooks and a laptop that had seen better days. She'd been up since 5, finishing an assignment for her business management course at NYU, and desperately needed caffeine before her shift at the boutique started at noon. The Starbucks was packed, as usual for a Tuesday morning. Business professionals in sharp suits tapped away on their phones, students hunched over laptops, and tourists studied the menu with confused expressions. Maya joined the line, pulling out her worn wallet and mentally calculating if she could afford a grande instead of her usual tall. She'd moved to New York 3 months ago, telling everyone she wanted to make it on her own. The truth was more complicated. Her father had built an empire, Chen Global Technologies, a multinational corporation worth billions, but Maya had watched what wealth did to people. She'd seen friends value her for her last name rather than who she was. She'd endured relationships where partners were more interested in her father's bank account than her dreams. So when she turned 23, she made a decision that horrified her family: she would live as a regular person, at least for a while. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Her father, Richard Chen, had been surprisingly understanding, though he'd insisted on certain conditions. She had an emergency credit card she'd promised never to use unless absolutely necessary. A security team was always within a 5-mile radius, though she'd negotiated that they remain invisible unless she was in genuine danger. And she had to check in every evening with a simple text, "I'm okay." For 3 months, it had worked. She'd found a tiny studio apartment in Queens, gotten a job at a boutique in Soho, and enrolled in night classes. She made friends who knew her as Maya Chen, student and retail worker, not Maya Chen, billionaire's daughter. It was liberating in a way she'd never experienced before. Next, the barista called, and Maya shuffled forward, still lost in thought. She was so focused on the menu board that she didn't notice the young man who'd just entered, flanked by 3 friends who laughed too loudly at everything he said. She didn't see him cut the line, walking straight to the counter as if the 15 people waiting didn't exist. "Tall cappuccino," Maya ordered, handing over her card. "Actually, I'm next," a voice said from beside her, dripping with entitlement. Maya turned to find a guy about her age, maybe 24 or 25, with perfectly styled blonde hair, a designer watch that probably cost more than her yearly tuition, and an expression that suggested he'd never heard the word no in his entire life. His navy blue blazer had a family crest embroidered on the pocket, old money, Maya recognized instantly, having grown up around it. "There's a line," Maya said calmly, gesturing to the dozen people behind her who were now watching with interest. "Do you know who I am?" The guy stepped closer, invading her space. His friends had moved up behind him, creating a wall of expensive cologne and entitlement. "Should I?" Maya's voice remained level, but her heart rate picked up. She recognized this type. She'd encountered them at every charity gala and society event her father had dragged her to growing up. The ones who believed their family name granted them special privileges in every situation. "I'm Ashton Vandermeer III. He said it like he was announcing royalty. "My family owns half the buildings on this street." "That's wonderful," Maya said, her tone making it clear she found it anything but. "The line's still behind me." The barista, a young woman with purple hair named Jules according to her name tag, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, she was here first." "I don't think you understand how this works," Ashton interrupted, pulling out a black American Express card. "I'm a platinum member. I have priority." "That's not a thing here," Jules said, her voice wavering slightly. Maya felt the familiar frustration building in her chest. This was exactly the world she'd tried to escape. The assumption that money meant you could treat people as obstacles rather than human beings. She'd seen her father navigate these situations with grace, always reminding her that character was defined by how you treated people who couldn't offer you anything in return. "Look," Maya said, trying to de-escalate, "I'm just getting a coffee." You can have priority tomorrow, today I'm staying in line. The Starbucks had gone quiet now. Even the espresso machine seemed to have paused. Everyone was watching to see how this would play out. Ashton's face flushed red. Do you have any idea how much money my family donates to the city? I'm sure it's very generous, Maya said, exhaustion creeping into her voice. She just wanted her coffee and to get to class. But that doesn't mean you get to cut in line at Starbucks. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion, though it couldn't have taken more than 2 seconds. Ashton's hand rose, and before anyone could react, before Maya's brain could even process what was happening, his palm connected with her cheek with a crack that echoed through the suddenly silent coffee shop. The force of it snapped Maya's head to the side. Her vision blurred for a moment, stars dancing at the edges. The metallic taste of blood touched her tongue where her teeth had cut the inside of her cheek. The pain was sharp and immediate, radiating from her face down through her neck. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. The entire Starbucks seemed frozen in a tableau of shock, Jules with her hand over her mouth, customers with their phones halfway raised, Ashton's friends with expressions of dawning horror as they realized their companion had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Maya's hand went to her face, fingers touching the spot that was already beginning to burn. She could feel the heat of it, knew without looking that there would be a mark. Her eyes, when she finally turned back to Ashton, weren't filled with tears as he probably expected. They were cold, analytical, the look of someone reassessing a situation with new information. You just hit me, she said, her voice remarkably steady given the circumstances. It wasn't a question, more a statement of fact that she was processing in real time. Ashton seemed to realize what he'd done, but instead of apologizing, his face hardened with defensive anger. You wouldn't move. You were being disrespectful. Do you know who you're talking to? Dude, one of his friends said, his voice tight with panic, what the hell did you just do? But Ashton was committed now, his ego too fragile to back down. She needed to learn some respect. People like her need to understand their place. People like her. Maya almost laughed at the irony. If only he knew. Jules had her phone out now. I'm calling the police. Sir, you need to leave right now. You're calling the police on me? Ashton's voice rose with indignation. My father is personal friends with the police commissioner. Do you understand the kind of trouble you're about to be in? Maya's hand had dropped from her face. She was thinking clearly now, her mind running through options. She could call her father. One phone call and Richard Chen would descend on this situation with the full force of his legal team and resources. But that would end her experiment in normal life. It would prove that she couldn't handle herself without Daddy's money and power. Or she could handle this the way any regular person would, let the police come, press charges, trust the system to work. The thought had barely formed when the front door of the Starbucks opened. The man who entered was tall, built like he spent his mornings in a gym and his afternoons practicing tactical maneuvers. He wore a dark suit that was professional but couldn't quite hide the athletic build underneath. His eyes swept the room with trained efficiency before landing on Maya, then on her reddening cheek, then on Ashton. Maya's stomach sank. No. Not yet. Miss Chen, the man said, his voice respectful but carrying an undertone that suggested he was restraining considerable anger. Are you all right? The use of her full name made several people in the coffee shop look up with new interest. The barista's eyes widened. Ashton's smug expression flickered with the first hint of uncertainty. I'm fine, Marcus, Maya said quickly, trying to salvage the situation. Really, it's just a misunderstanding. But Marcus had already pressed a finger to the nearly invisible earpiece he wore. Code red. Location confirmed. Subject has been physically assaulted. Initiate full protocol. No, Marcus, wait, Maya started, but it was too late. Through the large windows, she could see black SUVs pulling up outside, moving with coordinated precision that came from military training. The back door to the Starbucks opened, and 2 more men in dark suits entered. Then the side entrance. Within 30 seconds, every exit to the coffee shop had a professionally trained security guard standing at attention. Ashton's face had gone pale. His friends had taken several steps back, suddenly very interested in their phones. The other customers were pulling out their own phones now, some filming, others quickly Googling Maya Chen. Miss Chen, Marcus continued, his attention still fixed on her face where a red mark was definitely visible now. Did this individual strike you? Maya closed her eyes briefly. There was no putting this particular genie back in the bottle. Her 3 months of normal life were officially over. She could already see tomorrow's headlines: billionaire's daughter assaulted in Manhattan Starbucks. Yes, she said quietly. There was no point in lying, not with dozens of witnesses and probably security footage. Marcus's jaw tightened. He turned to Ashton, who was now looking decidedly less confident. Sir, you're going to want to remain exactly where you are. Now wait just a minute, Ashton blustered, trying to recover his earlier bravado. I don't know what this girl told you, but I'm Ashton Vandermeer III. My family. Your family, a new voice interrupted, is about to receive a very educational lesson in consequences. All eyes turned to the man who just entered through the front door. He wasn't particularly tall, maybe 5'10", with silver-touched black hair and sharp, intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a charcoal suit that was impeccably tailored, and he carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that came from decades of commanding boardrooms and negotiating billion-dollar deals. Richard Chen had arrived. Maya's father crossed the coffee shop in smooth, unhurried strides, his attention focused entirely on his daughter. The security team parted for him automatically, a choreographed movement that spoke to countless hours of practice. When he reached Maya, his hands came up to gently cup her face, tilting it so he could see the mark on her cheek in the light. For a moment, the most powerful CEO in international technology looked like nothing more than a worried father. His eyes softened with concern, his thumb barely touching the red mark as if he could heal it through sheer force of will. Baobei, he said softly, using his childhood nickname for her. Are you hurt anywhere else? I'm okay, Dad, Maya said, unable to keep the mixture of relief and frustration from her voice. Relief because despite everything, seeing her father made her feel safe. Frustration because this meant everything she'd been working toward was compromised. Really, it's just my cheek. Richard's expression hardened as he turned to face Ashton. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. This was the face that had stared down corporate raiders, that had negotiated with world leaders, that had built an empire from nothing and defended it against all comers. You put your hands on my daughter, Richard said, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the now silent coffee shop. Ashton had finally realized that he'd miscalculated badly. His face had gone from pale to almost gray. I didn't know who she was. And that matters because? Richard's eyebrows rose slightly. You assault strangers regularly, but you would have shown restraint if you'd known her father had resources? No, I just meant. You meant exactly what you said. That she needed to learn her place. That people like her needed to understand respect. Richard's voice never rose, but somehow that made it more intimidating. Marcus, did you record the interaction? Yes, sir. From the moment we identified the escalating situation. Marcus tapped something on his phone. We have full audio and video from 3 angles, including the assault itself and Mr. Vandermeer's statements afterward. One of Ashton's friends had quietly opened his phone and appeared to be texting frantically. Maya caught a glimpse of the message, need Dad's lawyers now. Ash hit someone. Bad. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Richard pulled out his own phone and made a call. Sandra, clear my afternoon. I need the legal team assembled within the hour. Full civil and criminal preparation. Also, get me everything on the Vandermeer family, business holdings, board positions, charitable foundations, everything. He paused, listening. Yes, all of it. And Sandra? I want it thorough. He ended the call and turned back to Ashton, who looked like he might be sick. My daughter has been living independently for 3 months. Working a retail job, paying her own rent, putting herself through school. Do you know why? Ashton shook his head mutely. Because she wanted to understand how the other half lives. Because despite growing up with every advantage, she believes in earning her place in the world. She wanted to know what it felt like to be judged on her character rather than her bank account. Richard's voice carried a hint of pride that made Maya's throat tight. She specifically asked for minimal security presence so she could experience life as a normal young woman in this city. The other customers were clearly hanging on every word. Jules the barista looked like she was witnessing the most dramatic moment of her entire career. And what did she learn? Richard continued. That there are people like you who believe their family name gives them the right to treat service workers with contempt. To cut lines. To resort to physical violence when someone dares to stand up to them. Mr. Chen, Ashton tried to interject. I'm not finished. The words were soft but absolute. You raised your hand to my daughter in a room full of witnesses because she insisted you follow the basic social contract of waiting your turn. And when confronted with your actions, you threatened everyone present with your family's connections. Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and allowed himself a small, cold smile. Interesting. My team works quickly. It seems your father, Ashton Vandermeer too, sits on the board of 3 companies. One of them is Chen Global Technologies. He looked up. Well, he did until about 45 seconds ago when I exercised my majority shareholder privilege to have him removed. Ashton's face went from gray to green. You can't. I can, and I did. Your family's primary investment fund also has significant holdings in tech stocks, many of which I influence through various partnerships and subsidiary relationships. Richard's expression remained pleasant, which somehow made it more terrifying. I imagine your father is receiving several very interesting phone calls right about now. One of Ashton's friends' phones rang. He glanced at the screen and his eyes went wide. Ash, it's my dad. He's asking what the hell we got you into. He says your father just called him screaming. The full weight of the situation was finally sinking in. Ashton swayed slightly on his feet. Mr. Chen, please. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll apologize. I'll do whatever. You'll do exactly what any other person who committed assault would do, Richard interrupted. You'll wait for the police, who Marcus has already called. You'll be arrested. You'll be charged. And then we'll proceed with both criminal prosecution and a civil suit. This will ruin me, Ashton whispered. Yes, Richard agreed simply. It will. Your actions have consequences. Welcome to the real world that my daughter has been trying to experience. Maya watched her father work with a mixture of awe and discomfort. She'd seen him in business mode before, but never quite like this. Never with the full force of his protective instincts combined with his considerable power. Sirens were audible in the distance now, growing closer. The security team remained at every exit, ensuring no one left before the police arrived. Several customers were still filming, and Maya had no doubt this would be trending on social media within the hour. Richard turned back to his daughter, his expression softening again. I'm sorry, he said quietly, meant only for her. I know you wanted to handle things on your own. You were respecting that, Maya said, touching his arm. Marcus only called you when I was hurt. That's exactly what we agreed on. Still. Richard sighed. Your experiment in normal life is probably over now. Maya looked around the Starbucks, at the security team, at the cowering Ashton, at the customers with their phones out, at Jules the barista who was watching everything with wide eyes. She thought about the last 3 months, about the friends she'd made who knew her as just Maya, about the satisfaction of earning her own paycheck, about the classes where professors challenged her ideas without knowing who her father was. Maybe not completely over, she said slowly. People will know who I am now, that's true. But maybe there's a middle ground. I can still work, still go to school, still live my own life. Just, with better security protocols. The police arrived within minutes, two uniformed officers pushing through the gathered crowd outside the Starbucks. The scene they walked into was unlike any routine call they'd probably expected, a coffee shop locked down by private security, dozens of phones recording, and one of the most recognizable business leaders in the world standing protectively next to a young woman with a visible mark on her face. Officer Martinez, according to her name badge, surveyed the situation with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen plenty of Manhattan drama. Her partner, Officer Chen, no relation, he clarified immediately, began taking statements from witnesses while Martinez approached Richard and Maya. "Mr. Chen," she said with professional courtesy, "I understand there's been an assault." "Yes, officer." Richard gestured to Maya. "My daughter was struck in the face by that young man." He pointed to Ashton, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "There are multiple witnesses and video evidence from several angles." Martinez turned to Maya, her expression shifting to something gentler. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm okay," Maya said, though her cheek was throbbing now, the adrenaline wearing off to leave behind a dull, persistent ache. "It's just bruised, I think." "We should still have paramedics take a look," Martinez said, already radioing for an ambulance. "For the record and for your own well-being." She pulled out a notepad. "Can you tell me what happened?" Maya recounted the incident, the line cutting, the escalating confrontation, the moment Ashton's hand connected with her face. Her voice remained steady throughout, falling into the calm, factual tone her father had taught her for dealing with legal matters. Around them, other witnesses were giving their own accounts to Officer Chen, and Jules the barista was pulling up the store's security footage on her tablet. "He just hit her," an older woman in a business suit was telling Officer Chen, her voice indignant. "Right across the face, like it was nothing. I've never seen anything so outrageous." "The guy was being a complete jerk the whole time," a college-aged student added. "Acting like he owned the place, threatening everyone. He literally said his family was friends with the police commissioner." At that, both officers exchanged a look. Martinez's jaw tightened slightly. "Did he now?" Ashton, realizing that particular threat was backfiring spectacularly, tried to backtrack. "I was upset. I didn't mean." "Sir, please don't speak unless directly asked the question," Martinez said crisply. She turned to Marcus. "You have video evidence?" Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her the footage. Even from where Maya stood, she could see it, crystal clear video from the security team's body cameras showing the entire interaction. Ashton cutting the line. The argument. The slap that cracked through the audio like a gunshot. His words afterward about people knowing their place. Martinez watched it twice, her expression growing progressively more severe. "That's assault, clear as day." "Sir," she addressed Ashton directly now, "you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent." As she read him his Miranda rights, Ashton's remaining bravado finally crumbled. "This is a mistake. My father's lawyers will have me out in an hour." "That's your right," Martinez said, pulling out handcuffs with practiced efficiency. "But you're still going to be arrested, processed, and charged. Turn around, please. This is insane." Ashton's voice rose in pitch. "Over a stupid argument about coffee?" "No," Richard interjected, his voice cutting through Ashton's protest like a knife. "Over assault. Over the belief that your money and name put you above basic human decency and the law. There's a difference." The handcuffs clicked into place, and Ashton was led toward the door. His friends, who had been desperately trying to melt into the background, were also being questioned by Officer Chen about their witness statements. The paramedics arrived as Ashton was being placed in the police car outside, and Maya found herself sitting in a chair while a kind-faced EMT named Sarah examined her cheek with gentle fingers. "You're going to have some bruising," Sarah said, pressing carefully around the impact site. "The swelling isn't too bad, which is good. Ice it when you get home, and if you experience any dizziness, vision problems, or severe headaches, get to an emergency room immediately. He hit you hard enough that we need to rule out concussion." "I feel okay," Maya said, though she accepted the ice pack Sarah handed her. Just sore. The adrenaline's still working, Sarah warned. You'll feel it more in a couple hours. Do you have someone who can stay with you tonight? Just to monitor for symptoms? She'll be with me, Richard said firmly. I'll make sure she's watched. Sarah made Maya sign some paperwork, gave her an information sheet about head injuries, and reminded her again to seek immediate care if anything changed. Then she and her partner packed up and headed to their next call, leaving Maya holding an ice pack to her face in a Starbucks that had become ground zero for what she suspected would be a media firestorm. Officer Martinez finished taking statements and turned back to Richard and Maya. Miss Chen, do you want to press charges? Maya looked at her father, then at the door through which Ashton had been led. She thought about everything that had happened, about the casual cruelty of someone who thought his name meant he could treat people however he wanted. She thought about Jules, who'd been threatened with professional consequences for trying to do her job. She thought about all the times people like Ashton got away with their behavior because their victims couldn't fight back. Yes, she said clearly. I want to press full charges. Martinez nodded approvingly. Good. We'll need you to come to the station to give a formal statement, but given the video evidence and witness accounts, this is about as clear-cut as cases get. She handed Maya her card. The district attorney's office will be in touch. Given the profile of this case, I suspect they'll want to prosecute vigorously. They will if they know what's good for their careers, Richard said, not quite under his breath. After the police left, the security team began the process of securing the scene and collecting contact information from witnesses who were willing to testify. Marcus approached Richard with an update. Sir, the video is already circulating online. Multiple angles from customer phones. It's trending on Twitter under hashtag Starbucks Assault and hashtag Justice for Maya. Richard sighed. Inevitable, I suppose. Get ahead of it. Have PR prepare a statement emphasizing that this isn't about who Maya is, but about accountability for assault. Make it clear we'll prosecute to the full extent of the law, and that we hope this sends a message that violence is unacceptable regardless of anyone's social status. Already being drafted, sir. Maya's phone, which she'd silenced during the chaos, buzzed incessantly in her bag. She pulled it out to find dozens of texts and missed calls. Her roommate, her co-workers from the boutique, friends from class, everyone had apparently seen the news already. This is going to be everywhere, isn't it? She said quietly. Her father put an arm around her shoulders, careful of her injured cheek. I'm afraid so. But Maya, you did nothing wrong. You stood up for basic decency, and you refused to be intimidated. That takes courage. I just wanted a coffee, she said, and despite everything, she laughed. It was absurd. She'd moved across the country, created a new life, tried to escape the spotlight, and it had all come crashing down in a Starbucks over a spot in line. The ride to Richard's penthouse in Tribeca happened in one of the black SUVs, with Marcus driving and 2 additional security vehicles forming a convoy. Maya watched Manhattan slide by through tinted windows, her ice pack pressed to her cheek, her mind still processing everything that had happened in the span of 30 minutes. Her father sat beside her, his phone pressed to his ear as he managed the fallout. She listened to him talk to his head of PR, his legal team, and finally to his personal attorney, a shark named Patricia Wong who'd built her reputation destroying people who made the mistake of underestimating her. Full prosecution, Patricia, Richard was saying. I want assault charges, and I want them to stick. Then we file civil suit, assault, battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, anything that applies. I want a number that makes his family feel it for generations. He paused, listening. I don't care if his father tries to settle quietly. This goes to trial. The video is public. The world is watching. We're making an example. When he finally ended the call, Maya turned to him. You're going nuclear on this. He hit you, Baobei. Richard's voice was gentle but immovable. He hit my daughter in public because she asked him to wait his turn. What did you think I would do? I knew you'd be angry. She trailed off, struggling to articulate the complex emotions swirling through her. I didn't want to be rescued. I wanted to prove I could handle things on my own. And you did, Richard said firmly. You stood your ground. You didn't back down. You called the police through that barista. Marcus and I didn't arrive until after the assault had already occurred. You handled it exactly right, Maya. What's happening now isn't rescue, it's consequences. There's a difference. Maya considered that. It was true that she'd already decided to press charges before her father arrived. She'd already stood up to Ashton, already refused to be intimidated. Her father's resources just meant those consequences would be more severe and more certain. The Vandermeer family is going to come after us, she said. Let them try. Richard's smile was cold. I've already made some calls. Ashton's father has been removed from my board, as you heard. But that's just the beginning. The Vandermeer fortune is substantial, but it's tied up in commercial real estate and investment funds. Funds that rely heavily on relationships with tech companies for their portfolios. I've already reached out to 5 CEOs in my network. By the end of the day, the Vandermeer family will find their business relationships becoming considerably more complicated. That seems harsh for something his son did. His son learned that behavior somewhere, Richard countered. Ashton Vandermeer too has a reputation in business circles for being ruthless and dismissive. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. Besides, in about an hour, Vandermeer too is going to call me trying to make this go away. He'll offer money, apologies, anything to keep this quiet. And when I refuse, he'll threaten me. That's when it becomes personal. The convoy pulled up to the private entrance of Richard's building. The security team swept the area first, then Marcus opened the door and escorted them through a private elevator that rose directly to the penthouse. Maya had been here before, of course, but not in 3 months. The space was exactly as she remembered, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Manhattan, minimalist furniture that cost more than most people's cars, artwork on the walls that belonged in museums. It was beautiful, elegant, and felt nothing like home. Her childhood bedroom was preserved like a time capsule. Richard had never changed it, even though Maya had long since moved out. Her trophies from debate team lined one shelf, her books another. Photos covered the walls, Maya at her high school graduation, Maya with her father at various charity events, Maya with her late mother before the cancer took her when Maya was 15. Rest, Richard instructed, though his tone was gentle. You've had a shock, even if you don't feel it yet. I'll have some food brought up, and Dr. Reeves will be by in an hour to check your head injury properly. Dad, I'm fine. The paramedic already. Humor me, he said, and Maya could hear the underlying worry beneath the words. You're my only child, Maya. I let you have your independence, your experiment in normal life, because I trusted your judgment and I wanted you to grow. But you were hurt today, and I need to make sure you're actually okay. Maya softened. For all his power and resources, her father was just a parent who'd watched his daughter get hit and hadn't been there to prevent it. Okay, she agreed. I'll rest. But Dad? Thank you. For respecting what I was trying to do. For only intervening when it was actually necessary. Richard kissed the top of her head, careful of her injury. Always, Baobei. Now rest. I have some calls to make. As her father left to work from his home office, Maya lay back on her childhood bed and pulled out her phone. The internet had indeed exploded. #Starbucks assault was the #1 trending topic on Twitter. TikTok was full of videos from multiple angles, all showing the same horrifying moment when Ashton's hand connected with her face. The comments section was a mix of outrage and support. Rich entitled brat got exactly what he deserved, read one top comment. Maya Chen is my new hero for standing up to him, read another. This is what happens when you raise kids thinking money makes them better than everyone else. But there were also darker comments. Conspiracy theories about whether it was staged. Accusations that Maya was using her father's money and power to destroy a young man's life over a minor incident. claims that she could have just moved and avoided the whole situation. Maya's former roommate from California had texted, "OMG, are you okay? I just saw the video. That guy is trash. Do you need anything?" Her manager at the boutique, "Take all the time you need. Your job is here when you're ready. Nobody would blame you for quitting, but I hope you don't. You're the best worker I have." Her study partner from her business management class, "Holy shit, your dad is Richard Chen. Why didn't you say anything?" That last one made Maya wince. She'd known that part was coming, the moment when people who'd known her as regular Maya discovered who she really was. Some would feel betrayed by the omission. Others would suddenly treat her differently. The dynamics of every relationship she'd built over 3 months would shift, and there was nothing she could do about it. She was about to put the phone down when it rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Miss Chen?" An older man's voice, smooth and calculated. "This is Ashton Vandermeer too. I believe we need to have a conversation about today's unfortunate incident." Maya sat up straighter on her bed, her mind sharpening despite the exhaustion and lingering shock. She should hang up. She should get her father. She should do anything except engage with the father of the man who'd assaulted her. But curiosity and perhaps a bit of her father's combative business instinct made her stay on the line. "Mr. Vandermeer," she said, her tone neutral. "You shouldn't be calling me directly. This is an active police matter, and you should be speaking with your lawyers." "I am well aware of the legal situation," Vandermeer too said, and Maya could hear the barely controlled anger beneath his professional tone. "I'm calling to discuss how we can resolve this matter quietly and efficiently, without destroying my son's future over a momentary lapse in judgment." "A momentary lapse in judgment," Maya repeated slowly. "Is that what you call assault? He's 24 years old. Young men make mistakes when emotions run high. Surely you, as someone who apparently values living among regular people, can understand that people sometimes act rashly." Maya felt her own anger rising now, sharp and clean. "I understand that your son physically struck me because I wouldn't let him cut in line. I understand that he then threatened everyone present with your family's connections. And I understand that you think money and influence mean those actions shouldn't have consequences. Everything has consequences, Ms. Chen," Vandermeer too said, his voice hardening. "I'm calling to offer you a significant settlement. Name your price. In exchange, you drop the charges and sign an NDA. This goes away, my son's record remains clean, and you walk away substantially wealthier." "I'm already wealthy," Maya pointed out. "Or did you miss the part where my father is Richard Chen? I'm aware of who your father is. I'm also aware that he's already begun a campaign of business intimidation against my family. Phone calls to board members, quiet suggestions to partners and investors. Your father is trying to destroy my business because of a conflict between 2 young people." "My father is ensuring that assault has consequences," Maya corrected. "And the answer is no, Mr. Vandermeer. I'm not taking a settlement. I'm pressing full charges, and we'll see you in court." There was a pause, and when Vandermeer too spoke again, the veneer of civility had cracked. "You're making a mistake, young lady. My family has been in New York for 5 generations. We have relationships and resources that your nouveau riche father can't even imagine. If you insist on pursuing this, I will make it my personal mission to ensure that you regret it." "Are you threatening me?" Maya asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Because I'm recording this call, and threatening a victim of assault is generally frowned upon." She wasn't actually recording, she hadn't thought that far ahead, but the bluff worked. Vandermeer too sputtered. "I'm not, that's not what I meant." "I think we're done here," Maya said. "Don't call me again. Any further communication should go through our lawyers." She ended the call and immediately forwarded the number and call details to Marcus with a message, "Vandermeer too just tried to intimidate me into dropping charges. Dad should know." The response came within seconds, "Already informed. Your father wants to see you in his office." Maya found Richard in his home office, a space that managed to be both comfortable and imposing. 3 monitors displayed various news feeds, stock tickers, and what appeared to be live updates from his legal and PR teams. Her father was standing by the window, looking out at the Manhattan skyline with a phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what his historical contributions have been, remove him from the gala committee," Richard was saying to someone. "The Chen Foundation will not be associated with anyone who raises a son to think violence is acceptable, then tries to buy their way out of consequences." He paused. "Make sure the statement is clear. We support accountability and justice. That's the message." He ended the call and turned to Maya, his expression concerned. "Marcus said Vandermeer called you directly? He tried to offer me a settlement. When I refused, he threatened me, though he was smart enough to keep it vague." Maya sat down in one of the leather chairs facing her father's desk. "I told him we'd see him in court." Richard's expression was proud but troubled. "You handled that well. But Maya, this is going to get uglier before it gets better. The Vandermeers are old money, and old money doesn't like to lose, especially to people they consider new money. They're going to use every resource they have." "Let them," Maya said, surprising herself with her own vehemence. "Dad, I spent 3 months trying to live like a normal person. And you know what I learned? That people like Ashton Vandermeer make life miserable for everyone who can't fight back. The barista who served us was terrified of losing her job because she tried to enforce basic fairness. Other customers were recording but wouldn't speak up because they were scared. The only reason Ashton is facing consequences is because I have resources. How many other people has he bullied who couldn't do anything about it?" Richard studied his daughter with an expression that mixed concern with something like awe. "When did you grow up so much?" "Probably sometime between moving out and getting slapped in a Starbucks," Maya said dryly, then touched her bruised cheek. "But seriously, Dad, if we don't follow through on this, what message does it send? That money can buy your way out of anything? That violence is acceptable if your family has enough connections?" "No," Richard agreed. "You're absolutely right. We prosecute fully, and we make sure the world sees that actions have consequences regardless of your last name." His phone rang. He glanced at the screen and smiled coldly. "Speaking of which, this is Ashton Vandermeer too calling me. Should I put it on speaker?" Maya nodded, and Richard answered, his voice professionally neutral. "Mr. Vandermeer." "Chen." The older man's voice came through tinny but clear. "We need to talk about this situation. I believe you already tried talking to my daughter directly, which was inappropriate and potentially illegal given the ongoing criminal investigation. I hope you were smarter than to threaten a victim of assault, but given your son's behavior, I'm not optimistic." "Don't lecture me about appropriateness," Vandermeer snapped. "Your daughter is refusing to be reasonable about a simple altercation." "My daughter was assaulted," Richard interrupted, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet register. "There's nothing simple about it. Your son committed a crime in full view of witnesses and cameras. Now he faces consequences. That's how society works. This is about you flexing your new money and trying to climb the social ladder at my family's expense." "No," Richard said softly. "This is about you finally learning that your family name doesn't put you above the law. And about teaching your son the same lesson before he hurts someone else. You've already cost me 2 board seats and torpedoed 3 major investments," Vandermeer ceded. "I know you've been making calls, poisoning relationships. That's actionable, Chen. That's tortious interference." "Is it?" Richard asked mildly. "Or am I simply exercising my right to do business with people who share my values? I'm not obligated to maintain professional relationships with people whose children assault others and whose fathers try to intimidate victims. If other business leaders feel the same way, that's their choice. This isn't over." "No," Richard agreed. "It's not. I'll see you in court, Vandermeer. Both the criminal proceedings for your son, and what I suspect will be an interesting civil case afterward. Enjoy your evening." He ended the call and looked at Maya. "That went exactly as expected." "He's going to come after us harder now," Maya said. "Undoubtedly. But Maya, here's what the Vandermeers don't understand about new money versus old money. Richard leaned back against his desk. Old money is comfortable. It's inherited wealth managed by trustees and financial advisors. It's board seats and social connections. It's powerful, yes, but it's also rigid and traditional. And new money? Maya prompted. New money is hungry. It's built through innovation and risk-taking and outworking everyone else. I didn't inherit my fortune, Baobei. I created it from nothing. That means I know every dirty trick, every legal maneuver, every pressure point in the business world because I've used them all to build what I have. The Vandermeers have connections. I have strategy, adaptability, and the willingness to burn bridges if necessary to protect my family. There was a knock on the office door, and Dr. Reeves, the family physician, entered with her medical bag. I understand someone needs a proper head injury evaluation. As the doctor examined Maya's cheek and ran through a concussion protocol, checking her pupils, her balance, her cognitive responses, Maya reflected on everything that had happened. She'd wanted to experience life as a regular person. Instead, she'd gotten a harsh lesson in exactly why having resources mattered. But maybe, she thought as Dr. Reeves declared her bruised but otherwise fine, maybe this was a different kind of education. Not about living without privilege, but about using privilege responsibly. About standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. About making sure that accountability applied to everyone, not just those without powerful fathers. I want to make a statement, Maya said suddenly, interrupting her father's conversation with Dr. Reeves about follow-up care. To the press. About what happened and why we're prosecuting. Richard looked surprised. Are you sure? Patricia would probably advise against it. I'm sure, Maya said firmly. Because this isn't just about me anymore, Dad. It's about everyone who's ever been bullied by someone with money and power. And I have a platform now, whether I wanted it or not. I should use it. Her father studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. We'll set it up for tomorrow, after you've rested. Patricia can help you craft the message. But Maya? Once you do this, there's no going back to anonymity. I know, Maya said. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's time I stopped trying to pretend I'm not Richard Chen's daughter and started figuring out what that actually means. The next morning, Maya woke to find her face had developed a spectacular bruise, purple and yellow blooming across her cheekbone like some kind of grotesque flower. She stared at it in the bathroom mirror, touching it gently and wincing at the tenderness. There would be no hiding what had happened, no downplaying it. The evidence was literally written on her face. Patricia Wong arrived at the penthouse by 9 a.m., carrying a leather portfolio and the kind of caffeinated energy that suggested she'd been up half the night preparing. She was in her 50s, with sharp features, expertly styled black hair with deliberate silver streaks, and a reputation for being absolutely ruthless in depositions. Maya, she said, shaking hands with a firm grip. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Your father speaks very highly of you. Thank you for coming on such short notice. They settled in the living room, where Patricia pulled out her tablet and began walking Maya through what to expect. The press conference is scheduled for 2 p.m. at the Chen Global Technologies headquarters. We're doing it there rather than somewhere neutral to make a point that we have nothing to hide, and that this is being handled with the full weight of institutional support. Won't that make it seem like I'm using my father's company for personal matters? Maya asked. Good instinct, Patricia approved. But we're framing this as a matter of corporate values. Chen Global has extensive policies about workplace safety, harassment, and assault. Your father is using this as an opportunity to reaffirm that those values extend beyond his company, that he believes in accountability everywhere, not just in his offices. Richard joined them, carrying a tray with tea and coffee. He'd clearly been up even earlier than Patricia, already dressed in a sharp navy suit, his silver-streaked hair perfectly styled. But Maya could see the tension around his eyes, the worry he couldn't quite hide. The district attorney's office called, he said, sitting down. They're moving forward with charges. Assault in the third degree, which in New York carries up to a year in jail. Given the video evidence and witness statements, they're confident in their case. What about Ashton? Maya asked. Has he been released? Bail was set at $50,000, Patricia said, consulting her notes. His family posted it immediately, of course. He's required to stay in New York and surrender his passport. There's also a restraining order preventing him from contacting you or coming within 500 feet. His lawyer is already making noise about the prosecution being influenced by your family's wealth and connections, Richard added. They're trying to flip the narrative, make Ashton the victim of a wealthy family's vendetta. Maya's jaw tightened. That's absurd. There's video from multiple angles showing exactly what happened. Truth doesn't always matter in the court of public opinion, Patricia said pragmatically. Which is why your statement today is so important. We need to control the narrative before it controls us. Now, let's talk about what you're going to say. They spent the next 2 hours crafting Maya's statement. Patricia wanted it to be personal but not emotional, firm but not vindictive, clear about the facts while making a broader point about accountability. Maya wrote and rewrote, crossing out lines that sounded too rehearsed, adding details that felt authentic. Remember, Patricia coached, you'll get questions from reporters. Some of them will be hostile. They'll try to make you defensive or angry. Stay calm, stick to the facts, and don't be afraid to say I can't comment on ongoing legal proceedings when appropriate. At noon, Maya's stylist arrived, a young woman named Keiko who'd been doing Maya's hair and makeup for formal events since she was 16. She took one look at the bruise inside. We're not covering this up, are we? She asked, already knowing the answer. No, Maya confirmed. People need to see it. Good. It's important. Keiko got to work, doing Maya's makeup to look natural and polished while ensuring the bruise remained visible. She styled Maya's hair in a simple, elegant low bun. For clothing, Maya chose a navy blue blazer and white blouse, professional but not overly formal, approachable but serious. When she looked in the mirror, she saw someone who looked older than 23. Someone who looked ready to face cameras and questions and the weight of public attention. The drive to Chen Global Technologies headquarters was made in the same security convoy as yesterday. Maya watched the city pass by, her stomach tight with nerves. She'd been to her father's office building countless times, but never like this. Never as the center of a media storm. The building was a gleaming tower of glass and steel in Midtown, with the Chen Global logo prominently displayed at the top. When they pulled into the private garage, Maya could see through the windows that the lobby was already packed with media, cameras, reporters, news vans with satellite dishes. It's not too late to change your mind, Richard said gently. We can have Patricia make the statement instead. Maya shook her head. No. This needs to be me. They took a private elevator to the executive floor, where a conference room had been set up for the press conference. A simple podium stood at one end, with the Chen Global logo on a backdrop behind it. Rows of chairs faced the podium, and camera crews were already setting up their equipment. Maya's hands were shaking. She clasped them together, willing them to be still. Marcus appeared at her elbow. Miss Chen, I've done a security sweep. Everyone in that room has been credentialed. There's no threat. You're safe. Thank you, Marcus. She appreciated that he understood her nervousness wasn't just about physical safety, but about the vulnerability of putting herself out there. At exactly 2 p.m., Patricia nodded. It was time. Maya walked to the podium, her father a step behind her, Patricia to her left. The camera flashes were immediate and disorienting. Reporters called out questions that she ignored, waiting for them to settle down. She pulled out her prepared statement, though she'd practically memorized it by now. The room finally quieted, dozens of eyes focused on her face, specifically on the bruise that makeup hadn't hidden. My name is Maya Chen, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. 2 days ago, I was standing in line at a Starbucks in Manhattan, waiting to order coffee before my class. A young man named Ashton Vandermeer III decided he didn't want to wait in line. When I, along with the barista and other customers, informed him that he needed to wait his turn like everyone else, he became aggressive. When I refused to move, he slapped me across the face. She paused, letting that sink in. The cameras captured every word, every expression. I want to be very clear about what happened. This wasn't a mutual fight. This wasn't an argument that got out of hand. This was a man who believed his family name and wealth entitled him to special treatment, and when he didn't get it, he resorted to violence. Multiple witnesses saw it. Multiple cameras recorded it. The video evidence is clear and unambiguous. A reporter raised her hand, but Maya continued speaking. Some people have suggested that I'm using my father's resources to unfairly target Mr. Vandermeer, that this is some kind of wealthy family vendetta. I want to address that directly. Yes, my father is Richard Chen. Yes, I come from privilege and wealth. I won't pretend otherwise. But that privilege doesn't make what happened to me any less real or any less wrong. She leaned forward slightly, her intensity building. Here's what I keep thinking about. What if I had been just another college student without resources? What if I'd been the barista behind the counter, just trying to do her job? What if I'd been any of the dozens of other people in that Starbucks who had to watch someone with money and power treat basic civility as optional? Would there have been consequences then? Or would Ashton Vandermeer have walked away, maybe with a warning, maybe with nothing at all, free to treat the next person the same way? The room was absolutely silent now. Maya could feel tears threatening but refused to let them fall. She wasn't going to cry on camera. She wasn't going to give anyone ammunition to call her emotional or hysterical. I have resources. I have my father's support. I have a legal team and security and all the advantages that wealth provides. And I'm going to use every single one of those advantages to make sure that Ashton Vandermeer faces full consequences for his actions. Not because I'm vindictive. Not because I want revenge. But because accountability shouldn't be a luxury that only some people can afford. Maya took a breath, gathering herself for the next part. This was the section she and Patricia had debated most, whether to make it personal, whether to be vulnerable. Patricia had worried it might make Maya seem weak. Maya had insisted that honesty was stronger than any carefully crafted corporate message. For the past 3 months, she continued, I've been living independently. I got an apartment in Queens. I worked retail in Soho. I went to classes at NYU. I paid my own rent with my own paychecks. I did this because I wanted to understand what life was like for people who don't have my advantages. I wanted to know if I could make it on my own, without my father's name opening doors. She saw some reporters nodding, others scribbling notes furiously. And I learned a lot in those 3 months. I learned that most people are kind and decent. I learned that working for your own money feels different than having it given to you. I learned that community and friendship matter more than the size of your apartment or the brand of your clothes. But I also learned something darker. I learned that people like Ashton Vandermeer exist everywhere, and they make life harder for everyone around them. Maya's voice grew stronger, more passionate. I met people at my job who dealt with customers who treated them like servants. I heard stories from classmates about bosses who harassed them and landlords who ignored maintenance requests because they knew their tenants couldn't afford to move or fight back. I saw how people without resources had to swallow their dignity over and over again just to survive. And I realized that my experiment in normal life was always temporary because I could always call my father if things got bad. Most people don't have that option. She gripped the sides of the podium. So when Ashton Vandermeer hit me, I had a choice. I could let it go, take a settlement, sign an NDA, and move on with my life. Or I could use my privilege to do something that most people can't do, fight back. Hold someone accountable. Send a message that violence isn't acceptable no matter who you are or who your family is. The Vandermeer family has already tried to intimidate me. They've offered me money to make this go away. They've threatened my father's business relationships. And I expect it's going to get worse before it gets better. But here's what they don't understand. I don't need their money. I don't need their social connections. And I'm not afraid of them. The conviction in her voice rang through the room. I'm pressing full charges against Ashton Vandermeer III for assault. I will cooperate completely with the district attorney's office. I will testify if required. And I will pursue civil damages, not because I need the money, but because consequences need to be real and substantial enough to actually change behavior. Any damages I receive will be donated to organizations that support victims of assault who don't have resources to fight back. That last part hadn't been in the original statement. Maya had added it during the final revision, and she could see her father's surprised but approving expression in her peripheral vision. I want to say something to everyone watching this, Maya said, her voice softening slightly. If you've ever been bullied by someone with power, if you've ever had to swallow your anger and just take it because you didn't think you could fight back, if you've ever watched someone with money or connections get away with terrible behavior, I see you. I understand. And I hope that what happens here sends a message that those people aren't untouchable. She straightened, preparing for the final section. To the barista at that Starbucks, whose name is Jules, thank you for trying to enforce basic fairness even when you were threatened. To the customers who stayed and gave statements to the police, thank you for being willing to stand as witnesses. To everyone who has supported me in the past 2 days, thank you. Your messages have meant more than you know. Maya looked directly into the camera. And to anyone who thinks that money and family connections put them above basic decency and the law, think again. Times are changing. Accountability is coming. And there are people like me, people who have resources and aren't afraid to use them to level the playing field. She paused one final time. I'll take a few questions now. The room erupted. Hands shot up, reporters called out, cameras zoomed in. Maya pointed to a woman in the front row from the New York Times. Ms. Chen, some critics say your father is using his business influence to unfairly punish the Vandermeer family. How do you respond? Maya had expected this question. My father is a private citizen and a business leader. He has every right to choose who he does business with and what values he wants his company to reflect. He's not using his influence to interfere with the criminal justice system, that's proceeding exactly as it would for anyone else with the same evidence. What he is doing is making it clear that Chen Global Technologies and our family foundation do not associate with people who condone violence or try to use money to avoid consequences. That's not punishment. That's values alignment. A man from Fox News called out next. Aren't you essentially admitting that there's one set of rules for wealthy people like you and another for everyone else? That's exactly my point, Maya said firmly. There shouldn't be different rules. But the reality is that there often are. People with money can afford better lawyers, can drag out proceedings, can pressure victims into settlements. I'm saying that in this case, someone with resources is using them to ensure the rules apply fairly. I hope that sets a precedent. A younger reporter from an online publication asked, what do you say to people who think this is an overreaction to what was, in the end, a slap? Maya felt anger flash through her but kept her voice level. I would say that minimizing assault is part of the problem. A slap is assault. It left a bruise you can all clearly see. It was captured on video. It was done in public, in front of witnesses, because Ashton Vandermeer was so confident there would be no consequences that he didn't even try to hide it. If we say that's acceptable, that it's just a slap, then we're saying that violence is okay as long as it's not severe enough to hospitalize someone. I reject that completely. Another reporter, this one from CNN, do you think Ashton Vandermeer should go to jail? That's for the courts to decide, Maya said carefully. I think he should face whatever penalties the law provides for assault. I think he should have to complete anger management and community service. I think he should understand, deeply and personally, that his actions were wrong and harmful. Whether that includes jail time isn't my decision to make. Ms. Chen, called out a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, there are rumors that your father's company is planning further retaliation against Vandermeer family businesses. Can you confirm? Richard stepped forward then, taking the microphone. I'll answer that. Chen Global Technologies makes business decisions based on performance, values alignment, and strategic fit. The Vandermeer family's businesses have, upon review, failed to meet our standards in several areas. Any changes to our relationships with those businesses are based on standard business practices, not retaliation. That said, I will always prioritize doing business with organizations that share our commitment to ethical behavior and accountability. It was a perfect corporate non-answer that somehow still sounded like a threat. Maya appreciated her father's political skill. Patricia stepped forward then. We have time for 2 more questions. A local news reporter asked, Maya, what's next for you? Will you return to your independent life? Maya considered carefully. I'll continue my education at NYU. I'll probably take some time off from work while the legal proceedings move forward, but I hope to return. As for living independently, that's become complicated now that everyone knows who I am. But I'm not giving up on the idea of making my own way. It just looks different now than I originally planned. The final question came from a reporter Maya didn't recognize. What do you want people to remember from this incident? Maya thought about that. About everything that had happened, everything she'd learned, everything she wanted to accomplish by speaking out. I want people to remember that assault is never acceptable, regardless of the circumstances. I want people to remember that having money doesn't excuse bad behavior, it actually creates more responsibility to act with integrity. And I want people to remember that sometimes, the people with resources have an obligation to use them to protect those without resources. That's what privilege should be for, not insulating yourself from consequences, but ensuring consequences apply to everyone. She stepped back from the podium. Thank you all for coming. The press conference video went viral within hours. News outlets played clips on repeat. Social media exploded with reactions, overwhelmingly positive, though there were detractors who accused Maya of being performative or using the incident for attention. The hashtag accountability for all trended alongside hashtag Maya Chen and hashtag Starbucks assault. That evening, Maya sat in her father's penthouse watching the coverage with a strange sense of detachment. That was her on screen, speaking with a confidence she hadn't entirely felt in the moment. That was her face, bruised and determined, filling millions of screens across the country and around the world. You did well, Richard said, sitting beside her with a glass of whiskey. Patricia said you were one of the best witnesses she's ever prepped. Natural, authentic, compelling. I just told the truth, Maya said. That's harder than you think in front of cameras, her father countered. Most people either freeze up or over-rehearse until they sound fake. You found the balance. Maya's phone buzzed constantly with messages. Her roommate wanting to know when she'd be back. Classmates expressing support. Old friends from California reaching out. Even a few interview requests from major news programs, Good Morning America, 60 Minutes, The Daily Show. You don't have to do any more interviews if you don't want to, Richard said, noting her expression. You've said your piece. Let the legal process take over from here. I know. Maya set her phone aside. Dad, can I ask you something? When you built your company, when you were fighting to make it successful, did you ever have to deal with people like the Vandermeers? Richard smiled without humor. All the time. Old money families who looked down on me for being new money. People who tried to shut me out of deals because I didn't have the right pedigree or go to the right schools. Business partners who tried to cheat me because they thought I wouldn't have the resources to fight back. How did you handle it? I outworked them, Richard said simply. I was smarter, hungrier, and willing to take risks they weren't. But more than that, I refused to play by their rules. They wanted to keep me out of their clubs and social circles. Fine. I built my own networks. They thought my lack of family connections was a weakness. I used it as a strength. I could make decisions faster, take bigger risks, because I didn't have 4 generations of family wealth to protect. He swirled his whiskey thoughtfully. The thing about old money versus new money, Baobei, is that old money is conservative. It's about preservation. New money is about growth and disruption. Old money families like the Vandermeers have spent generations building their reputation and their networks. They think that makes them untouchable. but it actually makes them vulnerable because they have more to lose. You're going to keep pressuring them, Maya said. It wasn't a question. I'm going to ensure that assault has consequences beyond the criminal justice system, Richard corrected. Ashton might get a slap on the wrist from the courts, first offense, wealthy defendant with good lawyers, maybe probation and community service. That's not enough. He needs to understand that his actions cost his family real money, real business relationships, real standing in the community. That's how behavior actually changes. Maya's phone lit up with a call from a number she didn't recognize, but the area code was local. She answered cautiously. Hello? Maya? It's Jules. From Starbucks. Maya sat up straighter. Jules, hi. How are you? I'm okay. I wanted to call and thank you. Jules's voice was emotional. I've been working retail for 5 years, and I've dealt with so many entitled jerks who treat me like I'm invisible or stupid. Usually I just have to take it because complaining might cost me my job. But you stood up. You didn't back down even when he got aggressive. And when he hit you, you pressed charges instead of just letting it go. I can't tell you how much that means. Maya felt her throat tighten. You stood up too, Jules. You told him he couldn't cut the line. You called the police. That took courage. Not compared to what you're doing, Jules said. I saw your press conference. You're right, people like him think they can treat us however they want because we can't fight back. But you can fight back, and you're doing it for all of us. So thank you. After the call ended, Maya sat quietly for a moment. This was why it mattered. Not the media attention, not the legal victory, but knowing that somewhere, people like Jules felt a little less powerless. Over the next few days, the legal machinery ground forward. The district attorney's office formally charged Ashton with third-degree assault. His lawyers immediately filed motions to suppress the video evidence, claiming it violated his privacy rights, a motion that was laughed out of court since the assault occurred in a public place. They tried to argue that Maya's wealth and her father's influence created an unfair prosecution, which the DA dismissed by pointing to the overwhelming evidence. Ashton himself had remained silent publicly, but his family had hired a crisis PR firm that was trying to rehabilitate his image. There were carefully leaked stories about his charitable work, about his bright future before this unfortunate incident, about how he'd been under stress from family pressure. Maya watched these attempts with bemused detachment. They were trying to make Ashton sympathetic, trying to create a narrative where he was young and made a mistake and deserved forgiveness. And maybe there was truth to some of it, maybe he was under pressure, maybe he was struggling. But none of that excused hitting someone. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Patricia had warned Maya that she'd have to testify, that Ashton's lawyers would try to paint her as vindictive or as using her father's money to destroy a young man's life. She'd have to stay calm, stick to the facts, and trust that the video evidence would speak for itself. In the meantime, Maya found herself in a strange limbo. She couldn't go back to her apartment in Queens, reporters had found it, and she'd had to hire additional security. She couldn't work at the boutique, customers and employees alike would be distracted by her presence. Her classes at NYU were continuing online for now, with her professors accommodating her circumstances. She was living in her father's penthouse, surrounded by luxury and security, unable to escape the spotlight. It was the opposite of the independent life she'd been trying to build. One afternoon, about a week after the press conference, Maya was reviewing case files Patricia had sent over when Marcus appeared at the door. Miss Chen, there's someone here to see you. She says she's a friend from your class at NYU. Maya looked up, surprised. Did she give a name? Priya Sharma. Maya's face lit up. Priya was her study partner in business management, the one who'd texted asking why Maya had never mentioned her father. They'd spent hours in the library together, had split countless orders of takeout while cramming for exams, had bonded over their shared frustration with their economics professor's impossible standards. Send her up, please. When Priya appeared, she looked uncomfortable in the opulent surroundings of the penthouse. She was wearing jeans and an NYU sweatshirt, her dark hair in a practical ponytail, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She looked so normal, so familiar, that Maya felt a rush of relief. "Hey," Priya said awkwardly. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to see me." "Of course I want to see you," Maya said, standing and moving to hug her friend. "Come in, please. Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea, water?" "Just water," Priya said, still looking around like she'd stepped into another world. Which, Maya reflected, she kind of had. They settled in the living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows and million-dollar view. Priya clutched her water glass like a lifeline. "So," she finally said. "Your dad is Richard Chen." "Yeah," Maya confirmed. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you." "I wasn't trying to lie, exactly, I just—" "You wanted people to know you for you, not for your family," Priya finished. "I get it. Actually, I really get it." She took a breath. "My parents are pretty wealthy too. Not like your level, but my dad's a cardiac surgeon and my mom's a professor at Columbia. They're well known in their fields. When I tell people, suddenly I'm treated differently. Like I'm supposed to be smarter or more accomplished or I'm slumming it by going to state school." Maya felt a wave of understanding. "That's exactly it. I just wanted to be regular Maya for a while. And then some asshole hit you in a Starbucks and blew up your whole life," Priya said bluntly. Despite everything, Maya laughed. "Yeah. Pretty much." Priya set down her water glass and leaned forward. "Look, I came because I wanted you to know that I'm still your friend. I don't care about your dad or his money or any of that. I care about the person who helped me understand microeconomics and who laughed at my terrible jokes and who bought me coffee when I was broke that one week. That's who you are to me." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. You don't know how much I needed to hear that. Are you coming back to class?" Priya asked. "Because Professor Martinez's lectures are brutal without you there to translate them." "I want to," Maya said. "I'm just not sure how yet. Everything feels so complicated now." "Then we'll figure it out together," Priya said firmly. "That's what friends do." As Priya left an hour later, promising to send over notes from the classes Maya had missed, Maya felt something loosen in her chest. The press conference, the legal proceedings, the media attention, all of that was important. But so was this, maintaining connections to the person she'd been trying to become, to the life she'd been building before everything changed. She wouldn't get her anonymous independence back. That was gone, probably forever. But maybe she could build something new, a life that acknowledged her privilege while using it responsibly, that maintained genuine friendships despite the wealth disparity, that balanced family obligation with personal identity. It wouldn't be the experiment she'd planned. But it might be even more meaningful. That night, Maya received an email from the district attorney's office. The preliminary hearing date had been moved up. Ashton's lawyers were trying to fast-track the process, probably hoping to get it resolved before media attention could build even further. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. It was time to face Ashton Vandermeer III in court. The Manhattan Criminal Court building was an imposing structure of granite and marble, its steps crowded with reporters, camera crews, and curious onlookers on the morning of the preliminary hearing. Maya sat in the back of the SUV, watching the chaos through tinted windows, her stomach tight with nerves. "You don't have to do this," her father said quietly from beside her. "We can request a postponement. Give you more time to prepare." "I'm ready," Maya said, though her hands betrayed her by trembling slightly. She clasped them together in her lap. "Let's get this over with." Patricia Wong sat across from them, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, her briefcase open on her lap as she reviewed last-minute notes. "Remember what we practiced. Answer only the questions asked. Don't volunteer extra information. Stay calm, even if Ashton's lawyer tries to provoke you. The video evidence is our strongest asset, your testimony just needs to support what the cameras already show." Marcus and the security team had already swept the courthouse, coordinating with court security to ensure Maya could enter through a private entrance, Even so, reporters had staked out every possible entry point, their cameras ready to capture any glimpse of the billionaire's daughter who'd become the face of accountability for the wealthy. The SUV pulled into an underground garage, and Maya was escorted through a series of corridors that bypassed the public areas. Even here, she could feel eyes on her, court employees, lawyers, people who recognized her from the endless news coverage. Some looked sympathetic. Others curious. A few openly hostile, as if her wealth itself was an offense. The courtroom was smaller than Maya had expected from television shows, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that gave everything a slightly dingy appearance. The prosecution table was already set up, with Assistant District Attorney James Rodriguez organizing his files with meticulous precision. He was in his late 30s, with close-cropped dark hair and the lean, intense look of someone who took his job very seriously. "Ms. Chen," he greeted her with a firm handshake. "Thank you for being here. I know this isn't easy, but your testimony is crucial. The defense is going to try to make this about wealth and privilege rather than about assault. We need to keep the focus on the facts, what happened, what you experienced, what the evidence shows." Maya nodded, taking her seat behind the prosecution table. Patricia sat beside her, a reassuring presence. The gallery began to fill. Richard Chen sat in the front row, his face impassive but his eyes watchful. Behind him, Maya spotted several people she recognized from the Starbucks, witnesses who'd been subpoenaed to testify. Jules the barista gave her a small, encouraging wave. Priya had come too, sitting near the back with a notebook, probably planning to take notes for the class assignment they'd joked about. And then, through the side door, Ashton Vandermeer III entered with his legal team. Maya hadn't seen him since that day in the Starbucks. He looked different now, his earlier arrogance replaced by a carefully constructed appearance of contrition. He wore a conservative navy suit, his blonde hair neatly styled, his expression somber. His lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Gregory Hutchins who'd built his career defending wealthy clients, walked beside him with the confidence of someone who'd won more cases than he'd lost. Ashton's parents sat in the gallery on the opposite side from Richard. Ashton Vandermeer too looked furious, his jaw clenched, his expensive suit unable to hide the tension in his shoulders. His wife, a thin woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a pearl necklace, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, playing the role of distressed mother. The bailiff called the court to order. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Rebecca Martinez." Judge Martinez was a woman in her 50s with intelligent dark eyes and silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a severe bun. She had a reputation for being tough but fair, with little patience for theatrics from either side. She surveyed the courtroom with the kind of look that suggested she'd seen every trick and wasn't impressed by any of them. "Please be seated," she said, her voice carrying authority without needing to be raised. "We're here for the preliminary hearing in the matter of the People versus Ashton Vandermeer III. Mr. Rodriguez, you may present your case." ADA Rodriguez stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "Your Honor, the People will show that on the morning of October 8, the defendant committed assault in the third degree against Maya Chen. We have video evidence from multiple angles, testimony from numerous witnesses, and physical evidence of injury. The facts are clear and unambiguous." Mr. Vandermeer struck Ms. Chen in the face after she refused to allow him to cut in line at a coffee shop. He played the video for the court, the same footage that had been seen millions of times online, but somehow more powerful on the large screen in the silent courtroom. Maya watched herself on screen, watched the argument unfold, watched the moment when Ashton's hand connected with her cheek. The crack of the impact echoed through the courtroom. Several people in the gallery gasped, even though they'd surely seen it before. Judge Martinez's expression remained neutral, but her eyes never left the screen. "Your Honor," Rodriguez continued, "this is not a he said she said situation. This is documented assault with clear intent and clear injury. The defendant believed his family name and wealth entitled him to special treatment, and when he didn't receive it, he resorted to violence. The People ask that this case proceed to trial." Gregory Hutchins rose, and Maya could immediately see why he commanded such high fees. He moved with practiced grace, his voice modulated perfectly to convey reasonableness and concern. Your Honor, what we have here is a regrettable incident that has been blown entirely out of proportion due to the parties involved. My client, Mr. Vandermeer, is a young man who made a mistake in a moment of frustration. He did not assault Ms. Chen in any meaningful sense of the word. There was a brief physical contact during a heated argument. Ms. Chen was not injured beyond a minor bruise that healed within days. Maya felt anger flash through her, but Patricia's hand on her arm kept her seated and silent. What we really have, Hutchins continued, is a wealthy and powerful family using the criminal justice system as a weapon against my client. Richard Chen has systematically destroyed business relationships, cost the Vandermeer family millions of dollars, and orchestrated a media campaign to paint my client as a monster, all over what amounts to a slap during an argument. The prosecution is influenced by the wealth and connections of the alleged victim's family. This is not justice, Your Honor. This is vendetta wrapped in legal proceedings. Judge Martinez looked unimpressed. Mr. Hutchins, are you arguing that the video evidence is fabricated? That the witnesses are lying? That assault laws don't apply when both parties are wealthy? I'm arguing that context matters, Your Honor. My client was provoked. There's no provocation that justifies assault, the judge interrupted sharply. Continue with your argument, but let's stick to actual legal points rather than character assassination. Hutchins regrouped smoothly. Your Honor, we're asking that these charges be reduced or dismissed. My client has no prior criminal record. He's a contributing member of society with a bright future. A conviction would be disproportionate to the actual harm caused. We believe the appropriate resolution is a conditional discharge or ACD, adjournment in contemplation of dismissal, which would allow my client to complete community service and anger management, after which the charges would be dismissed and sealed. Your Honor, Rodriguez interjected, standing, the defendant's lack of prior record doesn't erase the severity of his actions. He committed assault in front of dozens of witnesses. He showed no remorse in the immediate aftermath. In fact, he threatened the victim and witnesses with his family's connections. The video clearly shows intent and follow-through. This is exactly the kind of case that should proceed to trial. Judge Martinez reviewed the evidence in front of her, taking her time. The courtroom was silent except for the occasional whisper and the soft sound of someone's phone buzzing. Finally, she looked up. I've reviewed the video evidence, the police reports, and the witness statements. Mr. Hutchins, your argument about disproportionate prosecution might have merit if we were talking about ambiguous evidence or unclear intent. We're not. The video shows your client committing assault. The witnesses corroborate it. The victim has visible injuries documented by medical professionals and photographs. She turned to Ashton directly. Mr. Vandermeer, stand please. Ashton rose, his face pale. You struck another person in the face because you were frustrated about waiting in line, Judge Martinez said, her voice hard. Regardless of your family background, regardless of the victim's family background, that is assault under New York law. This case will proceed to trial. Bail conditions remain in effect. Pretrial conference is set for 3 weeks from today. She brought down her gavel. Next case. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Reporters rushed from the room to file their stories. Ashton's mother was crying openly now, while his father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Gregory Hutchins was already leaning in to speak urgently with his client. Patricia squeezed Maya's shoulder. That went as well as we could have hoped. Judge Martinez isn't going to be swayed by wealth or connections from either side. She's going to follow the law. Outside the courtroom, ADA Rodriguez pulled Maya aside. I need to prepare you for what comes next. This is going to trial, which means depositions, more evidence gathering, and eventually you testifying in front of a jury. Hutchins is good at his job. He's going to try to make you look vindictive, privileged, or like you're overreacting. Are you prepared for that? Yes, Maya said firmly. I've already been called all of those things on social media. I can handle it in court. Good. Because this is about to get much more intense. He was right. Over the next 3 weeks, the legal battle escalated. Depositions were scheduled, with both sides interviewing witnesses. Ashton's legal team filed multiple motions, trying to exclude the video evidence, trying to get Maya's father's business actions ruled inadmissible, trying to seal the court proceedings from the public. Judge Martinez denied almost all of them, her written opinions sharp and unambiguous. The video was recorded in a public place and was admissible. Richard Chen's business decisions were irrelevant to whether assault occurred. And given the public interest in the case, closing the proceedings would be inappropriate. The media coverage intensified. Think pieces were written about wealth, privilege, and accountability. Legal analysts debated the case on cable news. Social media remained divided, though polls showed that a significant majority supported Maya's decision to prosecute. Then, 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin, something unexpected happened. Maya was in the middle of studying for her upcoming exams. She'd returned to online classes, determined not to let the legal proceedings derail her education entirely, when Patricia called with unusual urgency in her voice. "Maya, I need you and your father at my office immediately. Hutchins has requested an emergency meeting. I think they want to discuss a plea deal." An hour later, Maya sat in Patricia's conference room, the Manhattan skyline visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. Patricia had her game face on, her legal pad covered in notes. Richard sat beside Maya, his expression unreadable. Gregory Hutchins arrived with Ashton and Ashton Vandermeer too. The younger Vandermeer looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a thinness to his face that suggested he hadn't been sleeping or eating well. His father looked furious but was clearly making an effort to contain it. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," Hutchins began, his tone more subdued than in court. "My client would like to make a statement." Ashton stood, his hands clasped in front of him. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, lacking any of the entitled bravado from that day in Starbucks. "Ms. Chen, I want to apologize. Sincerely apologize, not because my lawyers told me to, but because I've had 3 weeks to think about what I did, and I'm horrified by it." He took a breath. "I hit you. I committed assault because I was frustrated and angry and I believe the rules didn't apply to me. I was wrong. Completely, inexcusably wrong." Maya studied him, trying to determine if this was genuine or another legal strategy. "I've spent my whole life being told I was special," Ashton continued. "That my family name meant something, that doors would open for me, that I deserved certain treatment. And I believed it. I believed that waiting in line was beneath me, that service workers existed to accommodate me, that someone standing up to me was disrespectful rather than just fair." His voice cracked slightly. "Watching that video, seeing myself hit you, hearing what I said afterward about people knowing their place, I didn't recognize myself. Or maybe I did, and that's worse. That's who I'd become, and I didn't even realize how terrible it was until I saw it from the outside." "This is very moving," Patricia said dryly, "but we're here to discuss legal matters, not therapy sessions." Hutchins nodded. "My client is prepared to plead guilty to assault in the 3rd degree. In exchange, we're requesting a sentence of community service, anger management classes, and a probationary period. No jail time." "And?" Patricia prompted, because there was clearly more. "And Mr. Vandermeer will make a public apology, acknowledging his actions and taking full responsibility. He'll also make a significant charitable donation, $1 million, to organizations that support victims of assault." The room went silent. Maya looked at her father, who was studying Ashton with an unreadable expression. "Why?" Maya asked directly, addressing Ashton. "Why are you doing this now?" Ashton met her eyes. "Because going to trial means months more of this, months of you having to relive what I did, months of my lawyers trying to destroy your credibility and paint you as the bad guy. And you don't deserve that. You didn't do anything wrong. You just asked me to wait in line like a normal person, and I hit you for it. That's on me, not you." He glanced at his father, who looked like he wanted to interrupt but was restraining himself with visible effort. "Also," Ashton continued, "because my father hired private investigators to dig up dirt on you. To find something we could use to discredit you or embarrass you. And they found nothing. You're exactly who you appeared to be, a person trying to live independently, working hard, treating people with respect. Which made what I did even worse. Ashton Vandermeer too finally spoke, his voice tight. Son, you don't need to. Yes, I do, Ashton interrupted, and there was steel in his voice that hadn't been there before. I'm done letting you fix my mistakes, Dad. I'm done having you make problems disappear with money and connections. Ms. Chen was right in her press conference. People like me need to face real consequences, or we never change. Maya felt something shift in her chest. This felt real in a way that courtroom theatrics didn't. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Ashton said, looking at Maya again. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking that you consider allowing me to take responsibility in a way that doesn't require putting you through a trial. But if you want to go to trial, if you want to see me convicted and sentenced to jail time, I'll accept that too. It's your choice. I gave up my right to choose when I hit you. Patricia and Richard exchanged glances. Patricia pulled out her legal pad and began writing notes, outlining the terms they'd want if they accepted a plea deal. We need to discuss this privately, Patricia said. Give us the room, please. After Hutchins, Ashton, and Vandermeer too left, Patricia turned to Maya and Richard. This is actually a good offer. Pleading guilty means a conviction on his record. The community service and anger management are standard, but the public apology and the charitable donation are significant additions. Going to trial is always risky, juries can be unpredictable, even with strong evidence. But? Maya prompted, because she could hear it in Patricia's tone. But if you want your day in court, if you want to see him face a jury and potentially jail time, that's your right as a victim. This is your decision, Maya. Maya thought about it. About the weeks of preparation for trial, about testifying in detail about what happened, about having Ashton's lawyers try to discredit her character and motivations. About the media circus that would surround every day of the trial. She thought about Ashton's apology, whether it was genuine or calculated, whether he'd actually learned anything or was just trying to minimize consequences. But she also thought about what she'd said in her press conference. That this was about accountability. That consequences needed to be real and meaningful. What would the conviction mean for him? Maya asked. With a guilty plea to assault in the 3rd degree, he'd be a convicted criminal, Patricia explained. That follows you forever. Job applications, background checks, professional licenses, it all comes up. The community service and probation mean he'd be under court supervision, and violating terms could result in jail time. It's not nothing, Maya. It's actual accountability. Maya looked at her father. What do you think? Richard considered carefully. I think that young man out there is at a crossroads. He can either learn from this and become better, or he can become bitter and entitled and blame you for ruining his life. A guilty plea with the terms they're offering gives him a chance to grow while still holding him accountable. A trial that sends him to jail might just make him resent the system without actually changing. But, he continued, this is not my decision. You're the one he hit. You're the one who has to live with whatever choice we make. I'll support whatever you decide. Maya closed her eyes, thinking. She thought about Jules, about Priya, about all the people who couldn't fight back against people like Ashton. She thought about whether accepting a plea deal would look like she was going easy on him because of his apology, or whether it showed that accountability could happen without destroying someone completely. Finally, she opened her eyes. I want to talk to him. Alone. Just for a minute. Patricia looked alarmed. Maya, that's highly irregular. As your attorney. Just 1 minute, Maya insisted. I need to look him in the eye and decide if he means what he said. Against her better legal judgment, Patricia agreed, with the caveat that the conversation would be recorded for everyone's protection. Ashton was brought back into the conference room. Maya stood by the window, looking out at Manhattan while he took a seat at the table. Why should I believe you? Maya asked without turning around. Why should I believe this isn't just another strategy to avoid real consequences? You shouldn't, Ashton said simply. I've given you no reason to trust me. I've given you every reason to think I'm exactly the entitled asshole I appeared to be. Maya turned to face him. So why are you really doing this? Ashton was quiet for a long moment. Because watching you at that press conference, hearing you talk about privilege and responsibility and using resources to help people who don't have them, you sounded like someone I should have been. Someone I could have been if I hadn't been raised to think my last name made me special. He met her eyes. I'm 24 years old with a criminal assault charge and a reputation that's probably destroyed. My father is furious with me for wanting to plead guilty instead of fighting this. Half my friends have stopped talking to me. And you know what? Good. I deserved all of that. Maybe I needed all of that to actually see clearly for the first time in my life. Pretty words, Maya said, but she was listening. I know. And I know they don't undo what I did. But Ms. Chen, I'm asking for a chance to actually be accountable. To plead guilty, to do the work of changing, to use the same privilege that made me think I could hit you without consequences to actually try to do some good. That's all I'm asking for. A chance to be better than I was. Maya studied him, really looked at him. He looked smaller than he had in the Starbucks, less sure of himself. Whether that was genuine growth or just the weight of consequences, she couldn't entirely tell. But she thought about what her father had said about Crossroads. And she thought about what she really wanted from all of this. She wanted accountability. She wanted Ashton to understand what he'd done. And she wanted other people like him to see that actions had consequences. A guilty plea accomplished all of that. Okay, Maya said finally. We'll accept the plea deal. But I have additional conditions. She turned to Patricia. The community service needs to be at organizations that serve people without resources. Homeless shelters, food banks, places where he'll actually have to interact with the people he looked down on. A minimum of 500 hours. Patricia nodded, making notes. And the public apology needs to be substantial. Not just a press release. I want him to do interviews, to talk about what he learned and why what he did was wrong. To use his platform to actually make a point about privilege and accountability. Agreed, Ashton said immediately. And finally, Maya continued, I want annual proof for the next 5 years that you're living differently. Volunteer work, charitable giving, something that shows you're actually following through. If you stop, if this was just about avoiding trial, then I'll publicize that. I'll make sure everyone knows this was just another rich guy buying his way out of consequences. You'll have it, Ashton promised. All of it. Whatever you want. The plea deal was finalized over the next week. Ashton Vandermeer III pled guilty to assault in the third degree in a brief court appearance that was nevertheless packed with media. Judge Martinez accepted the plea and sentenced him to 3 years probation, 500 hours of community service at organizations serving disadvantaged populations, mandatory anger management and therapy, and the charitable donation. True to his word, Ashton gave a press conference where he took full responsibility for his actions. He didn't make excuses. He didn't blame stress or upbringing or temporary insanity. He simply acknowledged that he'd committed assault, that it was wrong, and that he was committed to doing better. The reaction was mixed. Some people praised Maya for showing mercy and giving someone a chance to grow. Others accused her of letting him off easy, of allowing wealth to buy a reduced sentence. The debates raged on social media and cable news. But Maya knew she'd made the right choice for herself. She'd gotten accountability. She'd gotten a conviction. And she'd made her point about consequences applying to everyone. 6 months later, Maya sat in a coffee shop in Greenwich Village, not a Starbucks. She'd developed a complicated relationship with that particular chain, reviewing her class notes. She'd finished her semester with straight A's and was now planning her next steps. She'd kept her apartment in Queens but had accepted some security measures as a compromise with her father. She'd returned to work at the boutique part-time, and while customers still sometimes recognized her, the attention had mostly died down. Her phone buzzed with a text from Priya. Study session tonight? I'm buying coffee since you saved my grade in economics. Maya smiled and was typing a response when someone approached her table. She looked up to find Ashton Vandermeer standing there, looking uncertain. I'm sorry to bother you, he said quickly. I know I'm not supposed to approach you per the restraining order, but I saw you from outside and I just wanted to say, I finished my first 100 hours of community service at a homeless shelter in Brooklyn. And I wanted you to know that it's been eye-opening. In a good way. So, thank you for giving me the chance to do this. Before Maya could respond, he'd turned and left, not waiting for her reaction. Maya watched him go, then went back to her phone and her response to Priya. Life was complicated. People were complicated. Accountability was complicated. But it was still worth fighting for. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.